Nationwide coverage of the Gabby Petito case is focusing attention on other missing persons cases that have not received as much news media attention. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. I'm Marcella Lee.
And I'm Jesse Pagan in for Carlo Cicchetto. As News 8's David Gofferton reports, missing and murdered indigenous women rarely getting the type of news coverage as cases involving white women.
I first want to express my deepest condolences to the Petito family. What they're experiencing is something that indigenous families experience far too frequently.
Professor Jolie Proudfit, chair of American Indian Studies at Cal State San Marcos, is reacting to the media frenzy over Gabby Petito.
In Wyoming, where Petito's remains were found, 710 indigenous people were reported missing in the last decade alone, 710.
She says all too often the race of a missing person determines media coverage and law enforcement response.
Indigenous women go missing at disproportionately higher rates, but we're not afforded the same amount of national attention or public outrage.
The majority of murder and missing person cases involving indigenous women go unsolved, according to a 2020 report from the Sovereign Bodies Institute.
White women who have gone missing or found murdered have made national coverage and become household names. And that just simply is not the case with indigenous women or Black women, for that matter.
In Chula Vista, Native American Mel McGregor went missing in 2015. Her case remains unsolved, according to the California Missing Persons Database maintained by the state attorney general.
For missing Montanans.
Every year, activists draw attention to the issue on May 5th.
May 5th is National Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day, to observe, recognize, and to advocate for these types of solutions.
To help bring closure to the families of the missing.
It is so important to humanize all of the people, and especially indigenous women, as we are going missing and murdered in epidemic proportions.
Last year, the governor signed AB 3099, a law that will help report and track crimes on tribal lands, especially those involving missing women and girls. Marcella?
And David, I know you've been reporting on the missing mother from Chula Vista, Maya Miliete. She has received some national media coverage, but I know her family feels like not enough was done, especially when she first went missing back in January.
Yes, Maya's case has received some national coverage, but nowhere near the amount of coverage that Gabby Petito's case has received. And I just want to mention, while we're on the subject, Team Maya volunteers will be back out tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m., like they are every weekend, searching this time in the area of Buckman Springs Road.
Yes, hoping that they can find Maya, bring her home soon. Thanks so much, David.
Well, we have seen plenty of wet weather come through over the last about 3 hours or so, mainly. Take a look at what we've seen over just the last hour. A tree that came down. You need to keep in mind the severe thunderstorms that we saw in the San Diego metro area, an anomaly for us. We usually don't see those in the metro area. They're usually contained to those mountains, the deserts, maybe even some of your inland valleys. But here's what we saw between about 3 and 5 p.m. Hail that came down. We saw wind gusts in the 40, 50, 60 mile per hour range, and rain totals just around half an inch. Take a look at what we saw. Here are your Friday rain totals, tying the record for the day at San Diego International Airport with 48 100ths. The last time we saw that much rain on September 24th was back in 1958. We saw more than half an inch in Point Loma, so some pretty decent rain totals out there. Conditions outside right now show that those showers have largely subsided, but we do still have some ponding out there, also some localized flooding to keep an eye on. So while you're driving through the evening hours, make sure to watch out for those larger puddles. We're going to be tracking the possibility of some very, very light showers, nothing compared to what we saw over the last 2 hours or so. Things still remain light over your Saturday and Sunday, but mainly dry out there, and we're sticking with that trend of fall-like weather. Details are all coming up just a few minutes away. Back to you.
All right, Evan, thanks. Students across San Diego County made their voices heard to bring attention to climate change.
From the South Bay to San Diego State to downtown outside City Hall, a series of school strikes happened today as part of an international effort ahead of the United Nations conference. News 8's Heather Hope has the story.
Yes, hundreds of students from across San Diego County came together. We have San Diego High School right behind me. They say they are demanding climate justice for their future.
'Cause I've got earth beneath my feet and a sky.
Students gathered together as if for a music festival in downtown San Diego outside City Hall. Holding nature-centered signs from Resist, Build, Rise to be fossil fuel free. These students from San Diego High School said they got an excused absence from class today to participate in global climate strikes ahead of the 26th UN Climate Change Conference.
It's a glorious day on this planet I love.
The young minds' goal was to demand public action on climate change.
Nothing has changed. And we're here asking for change.
The climate rally started in the South Bay with a march from Friendship Park at the border to Chula Vista City Hall.
As youth, we're responsible for the future and the future of our planet. And so that's why it's so important that specifically youth is joined together here today.
Student organizers from high schools to universities mobilized the day of action for their schools.
We're here to have our voices heard by the government and those in higher power.
At San Diego State, students walked all across campus chanting with signs supporting Mother Nature.
We have a lot of efforts towards it, but we're not making enough progress, I hear.
Many students feel their campus has a long way to go to become more sustainable.
But we do have solar on some of our buildings, but we're still using a cogeneration plant at the back of the facility. We're going to graduate for these careers, but what good are those careers going to be if we do not have a planet left?
Students hope their demonstration makes a difference.
I am glad so many of you showed up today to show that you care about our climate crisis. This is going to affect us. This is going to affect our futures. We are not fighting for change at this point. We are fighting so we can have a future.
And the students here say they want San Diego County to set a goal for net zero emissions by year 2030. Heather Hope, News 8.
All right, Heather, today at Aztec Park in La Mesa, the Urban Corps is planting trees hoping for that greener tomorrow.
It's part of a $1.2 million grant from the state to plant thousands of trees throughout the county. The Corps says that when it comes to planting trees in San Diego's unique climate, it's important to choose the right tree for the right place and give it the right care.
We need trees that are low to moderate water use, especially for public plantings, because the onus to irrigate is such a big thing that we want to start out with trees that aren't so thirsty and require extra care in that regard.
And they got some rain today, a little water. So far, the Urban Corps has planted 1,800 trees in the county, including 150 in La Mesa.
President Biden is urging the millions of Americans who are eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine booster shot to go and get it.
This comes after the CDC updated its recommendations for some people who received their second Pfizer dose at least 6 months ago. Natalie Brand has the latest from the White House.
The White House says tens of millions of older and vulnerable Americans can now get their Pfizer booster shots. The president says he will get his.
The booster shot is free and easily accessible. Go get the booster.
President Biden's comments come after CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky overnight signed off on a series of recommendations made by an advisory committee, agreeing boosters should be offered to people 65 and up. It will also be available to people 18 and older with underlying health conditions. But in an unusual move, she put back in the recommendation for a third dose to individuals whose jobs might put them at risk, such as healthcare workers.
As CDC director, it's my job to recognize where our actions can have the greatest impact.
Moderna is in the process of seeking FDA authorization for a booster, and Johnson & Johnson is expected to follow suit. The administration's health officials hope to make additional recommendations in coming weeks.
The FDA is working closely with Moderna and J&J to get and process their data as quickly as possible. This is a high priority.
But the top priority remains getting shots in the arms of unvaccinated Americans.
Listen to the voices of the unvaccinated Americans who are lying in hospital beds, taking their final breath, saying, and literally we've seen this on television, if only I'd gotten vaccinated, if only.
Anna and
we're going to bring you
Sunny
back later.
have to leave.
Yeah.
Yes.
COVID also caused a scramble on The View. Two co-hosts had to leave during the show after testing positive ahead of an interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. She did the segment from backstage instead. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, the White House.
6 months need to have passed since your second shot to be eligible for a Pfizer booster. The CDC is recommending them to people 65 and older, people living in long-term care, and people who are 50 to 64 years old with underlying medical conditions. If you're 18 to 49 with an underlying medical condition, you can also get one. Or if you're 18 to 64 with an increased risk of exposure because of your job.